Mystic. This is a really old scene. I haven't done ASMR in like a year, well, a long time. So the scene's so old. It didn't have my new mic, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Come in, come in. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good time zone. Welcome on in, everybody. Is the fireplace okay? Is it too loud? We're starting off with scuff. And that's how it is here. Hopefully that works. Let me see here. Welcome on in, Mystic. Hope you're doing well. Happy Sunday. I see you took up first, so you get a not silent, but a little one. Welcome on in, and happy Sunday money to you as well. I haven't done these in so long that's kind of weird. It's kind of nerve-wracking, actually. I think I turned my alerts down or off, so hopefully that won't distract anybody. The only thing I didn't touch is like donos, but that should be okay. But any raids or things like that we should be good. You should just hear a fireplace and me reading some stories. Let me know if any of the audio is not good, if I'm speaking too loud, if I'm speaking too softly. It's supposed to be soft, but I have a soft voice, so me speaking softly could literally be a big whisper to your guys' ears. I don't know. But welcome on in, Chief Irashaimase. You can still fish. It should be muted, so that means you can still see a pop-up, but it won't make a noise. So most things should not make a noise. It's just here for you to get comfy. I will answer chat while I read. I'm going to try something a little bit different. So I'll be reading, but also answer any questions or communicate to you guys. As you can see, we're doing ASMR today. I'm going to be reading you a book called The Interview with the Vampire. We read it before, like 2 times. I kind of think I found where we left off. If not, it'll be where we're at. So we're going to go through my favorite novel of all time, slowly getting through Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. We got a nice cozy fireplace going. If you fall asleep, that's fine. If you put gaming in the background, that's fine. You could just, it's a chill stream. I like these. I just was always hesitant to do more ASMRs because I don't have a mic set up for it. I just have a regular mic, so that's what we're gonna do today. Anyways, I was scuffed actually. My mic wasn't on the scene. You missed my scuff. It happened already. I'm pretty sure some type of alert will pop up and scare everybody. I think I got most of them, so, but there's probably something I forgot. So, I'm a vampire, and I'm going to be reading to you a vampire book. If you're here for the last 2, maybe we did 2 sessions. We got through most of the New Orleans arc, where Lestat and Louis met, and Lestat messed up Louis' life, and then they got kicked out of their house. It got burned down, and this is sort of the parts after that. If you remember or ever watched a movie, that's where we're going to start off. We're going to start off after they left their mansion, their plantation, and are sort of, I think they've kind of moved on to Europe at this point. I had to pick a page, guys. My Kindle messed up on me. I could have sworn I bought the book and now it's gone off my Kindle, and it gave me a sample and it disappeared. So we're just gonna pick a spot. Okay. So I'm gonna start on page 187 for me, And yeah, hope you enjoy. And again, let me know if the fireplace is too loud, if I'm too low, if there's any audio messed up. I haven't done this in quite some time. All right. I can't bear it, Lestat, I said to him. You choose your companion badly. But Louis, he said, you haven't tried. The vampire stopped. He was studying the boy, and the boy, astonished, said nothing. It was true, what he had said. I had not drunk enough, and shaken by the girl's fear, I let him lead me out of the hotel, down the back stairs. People were coming now from the Conde Street ballroom, and the narrow streets were jammed. There were super parties in hotels. The Planter families were lodged in town in great numbers, and we passed through them like a nightmare. My agony was unbearable. Never since I was a human being had I felt such mental pain. It was because all of Lestat's words had made sense to me. I knew peace only when I killed, only for that minute. And there was no question in my mind that killing of everything less than a human being brought nothing but a vague longing, the discontent which had brought me too close to humans. To watch their lives through glass, I was no vampire. And in my pain, I asked irritatingly, like a child, could I not return? Could I not be human again? Even as the blood of that girl was warm in me, I felt that physical thrill and strength. I asked that question. Welcome on in. Thank you for the follow, Nick. I hope you're doing well. Good evening or good day. We're just reading some Interview with the Vampire. Hope you guys enjoy the story. The faces of humans passed me like candle flames in the night, dancing on the dark waves. I was sinking into the darkness. I was weary of longing. I was turning around and around in the street, looking at the stars and thinking, yes, it's true. I know what he was saying, it's true. That when I kill, there is no longing, and I can't bear this truth. I can't bear it. OX, thank you for the follow. Welcome on in to Twilight. I hope you're doing well. Good evening. Welcome on in to Interview with the Vampire, where the vampire reads you a vampire story. You're doing well? Glad you're doing well. I'm doing okay. Trying to stay cool on this hot day. I hope you guys are being cool as well. Suddenly, there was one of those arresting moments. The street was utterly quiet, and we had strayed far from the main part of the old town, and were near the ramparts. There were no lights, only the fire in a window, and the far-off sound of people laughing. But no one here. No one hears us. I could feel the breeze suddenly from the river, and the hot air on the night rising, and Lestat near me. So still, he might have been made of stone. Over the long row of pointed roofs were the massive shapes of oak trees in the dark, great swaying forms of myriad sounds. Under the low-hung stars, the pain for the moment was gone. The confusion was gone. I closed my eyes, and I heard the wind, and the sound of the water flowing softly, swiftly in the river. It was enough for one moment, and I knew that it would not endure, that it would fly away from me like something torn out of my arms, and I would fly after it, more desperately loving than any other creature under God to get it back. And then a voice beside me rumbled deep in the sound of the night, a drum beat, as the moment ended, saying, do what is in your nature to do. This is but a taste of it. Do what it is in your nature to do. And the moment was gone. I stood like the girl in the parlor in the hotel, dazed and ready for the slightest suggestion. I was nodding at Lestat as he nodded at me. Pain is terrible for you, he said. You feel it like no other creature because you are a vampire. You don't want it to go on. Welcome on in, Eddie. I hope you're doing well. Good evening. No throws are on. All sounds are turned off because we are chill here today. Sorry. So save your points. No, I answered him. I feel as I felt with her, wed to her and weightless, caught as if by a dance. That and more. His hand tightened on mine. Don't turn away from it. Come with me. He led me quickly through the street, turning every time I hesitated, his hand out of mine, a smile on his lips. His presence as marvelous to me as at night he'd come to my mortal life and told me we would be vampires. Evil is a point of view, he whispered now. We are immortal, and what we have before us are the rich feasts that conscience cannot appreciate, and mortal men cannot know without regret. God kills, and so shall we, indiscriminately. He takes the richest and the poorest, and so shall we. For no creatures under God as are we are, none so like him are ourselves, dark angels not confined to the stinking limits of hell, but wandering his earth and all of its kingdoms. I want a child tonight. I am like a mother. I want a child. Hey, calm down. Yes, there's a fire in the back. We can roast some marshmallows. I should have known from what he meant. I did not. He had me mesmerized, enchanted. He was playing to me as he had when I was mortal. He was leading me. He was saying, your pain will end. We'd come to the street of lighted windows, and it was a place of rooming houses, sailors, floatmen. We entered a narrow door, and then, in a hollow stone passage, in which I could hear my own breath like the wind, he crept along the wall until his shape leaped out of the light of the doorway, beside the shadow of another man, his hands bent together, their whispers like the rustling of dry leaves. What is it? I drew near to him as he came back. Afraid suddenly this exhilaration in me would die, I saw again that nightmare night landscape I had seen when I spoke with Babette. I felt the chill of loneliness, the chill of guilt. She's there, he said. You wounded one, your daughter. What do you say? What are you talking about? You've saved her, he whispered. I knew it. You left the window wide on her and her dead mother, and the people passing in the street brought her here. The child. The little girl. I gasped. What he had already leading me to through the door to stand at the end of the long ward of the wooden beds, each with a child beneath a narrow white blanket, one candle at the end of the ward, where a nurse bent over a small desk. We walked down the aisle besides the rows. Starving children, orphans, he said. Children of plague and fever. He stopped. I saw a little girl lying in a bed, and then the man was coming, and he was whispering to Lestat. Such care for a sleeping little one. Someone in another room was crying. The nurse rose and hurried away. And now the doctor bent and wrapped the child in a blanket. Lestat had taken the money from his pocket and set it on the foot of the bed. The doctor was saying how glad he was he'd come for her, how most of them were orphans. They come in on the ships, sometimes orphans too young even to tell which body was that of their mother. He thought Lestat was the father. And in moments Lestat was running through the streets with her, the white of the blanket gleaming against his dark coat and cape, and even to my expert vision, as I ran after him, it seemed sometimes as if the blanket flew through the night with no one holding it, a shifting shape traveling on the wind, like a leaf stood upright, and sent scurrying along a passage, trying to gain the wind all the time while to truly take flight. I caught him finally as we approached the lamp place near Place des Mars. The child lay pale on his shoulder. Her cheeks were still full like plums, though she was drained and near death. She opened her eyes, or rather the lids slid back, and beneath the long curling lashes I saw a streak of white. Lestat, what are you doing? Where are you taking her? I demanded, but I knew too well. He was heading for the hotel and meant to take her into our room. The corpses were as we left them, one nearly set in a coffin as if the undertaker had already attended to her, and the other in her chair at the table. Lestat brushed past them as if he didn't see them, while I watched him in fascination. The candles had all burned down, and the only light was that of the moon and the street. I could see his iced and gleaming profile as he set the child down on a pillow. Come here, Louis. You haven't fed enough. I know you haven't, he said, with that same calm, convincing voice he had used skillfully all evening. He held my hand in his own warm and tight. See her, Louis? How plump and sweet she looks? As if even death can't take her freshness. The will to live is strong. He might make a sculpture of her tiny lips and rounded hands, but he cannot make her fade. You remember the way you wanted her when you saw her in that room. I resisted him. I didn't want to kill her. I hadn't wanted to last night, and then suddenly I remembered two conflicting things and was torn in agony. I remembered the beating of her heart against mine, and I hungered for it. Hungered for it so badly, I turned my back on her in the bed and would have rushed out of the room had not Lestat held me fast. And I remembered her mother's face, and that moment of horror when I dropped the child and he'd come into the room. But he wasn't mocking me now. He was confusing me. You want her, Louis, don't you see? Once you've taken her, then you take whomstever you wish. You wanted her last night, but you were weakened, and that's why she's not dead. I could feel it was true, what he said. I could feel again the ecstasy of being pressed to her, her little heart going and going. She's too strong for me, her heart. It wouldn't give up. I said to him, Is she so strong? He smiled. He drew me close to him. Take her, Louis. I know you want her. And I did. I drew close to the bed now and just watched her, her chest barely moving with her breath, and one small hand was tangled in her long gold hair. I couldn't bear it, looking at her, wanting her not to die, and wanting her, and the more I looked at her, the more I could taste her skin, feel my arms sliding round the back, and pulled her up to me, feel her soft neck. Soft, soft. That's what she was, so soft. I tried to tell myself it was best for her to die. What was there to become of her? But these were lying thoughts. I wanted her, and so I took her in my arms and held her, her burning cheek on mine, her hair falling down over my wrists and brushing my eyelids, the sweet perfume of child strong and pulsing in spite of sickness and death. She moaned now, stirring in her sleep, and that was more than I could bear. I'd kill her before I'd let her wake up and know it. I went into her throat and heard Lestat saying to me strangely, Just a little tear. It's just a little throat. And I obeyed him. I won't tell you again what it was like, except that it caught me up just as I had done before. And, as killing always does, only more, so that my knees bent, and I half lay on the bed, drinking her dry, that heart pounding again that would not slow, would not give up. And suddenly, as I went on and on, the instinctual part of me waiting for the slowing of her heartbeat, would mean death. Lestat wrenched me from her. But she's not dead, I whispered. But it was over. The furniture of the room emerged from the darkness. I sat stunned, staring at her, too weak to move, my head rolling back against the headboard of the bed, my hands pressing down on the velvet spread. Lestat was snatching her up, talking to her, saying to me, Claudia, listen to me. Come round, Claudia. He was carrying her now out of the bedroom into the parlor, and her voice was so soft. I barely heard him. You're ill. Do you hear me? You must do as I tell you to get well. And then, the pause that followed, I came to my senses. I realized what he was doing, that he had cut his wrist and given it to her, and she was drinking. That's it, dear, more, she was saying to her. You must drink to get well. Damn you, I shouted, and he hissed at me with blazing eyes. He sat on the settee with her locked to his wrist. I saw her, white hand clutching his sleeve, and I could see his chest heaving from breath and his face contorted the way I had never seen it. He let out a moan and whispered against her to go on, and then I moved from the threshold. He glared at me again, as if to say, "I'll kill you." "But why, Lestat?" I whispered to him. He was trying now to push her off, and she wouldn't let go. With her fingers locked around his fingers and arm, she held the wrist to her mouth, and a growl came out of her. "Stop, stop," he said to her. He was clearly in pain. He pulled back from her and held her shoulders with both hands. She tried desperately to reach his wrist with her teeth, but she couldn't. And then she looked at him with the most innocent astonishment. He stood back, his hand out lest she move. Then he clapped a handkerchief to his wrist and backed away from her, towards the bell rope. He pulled it sharply, his eyes still fixed on her. "What have you done, Lestat?" I asked him. "What have you done?" I stared at her. She sat composed, revived, filled with life, no sign of pallor or weakness in her legs. Her legs stretched out and straight. On a damask, her white gown soft and thin like an angel's gown around her small form. She was looking at Lestat. "Not me," he said to her, "ever again. Do you understand? But I'll show you what to do." Welcome back. Yes, it's very hot. It's too hot. I'm sorry. Everybody's burning up. I'm sorry. Please cool down, though. Try your best. Turn on some fans. Drink some what do you call it? Cold Coke. When I tried to make him look at me, he answered me as he was what he was doing. He shook me off. He gave me such a blow with his arm that I hit the wall. Someone was knocking now. I knew what he meant to do. Once more I tried to reach out for him, but he spun so fast I didn't even see him hit me. When I did see him, I was sprawled on the chair and he was opening the door. "Yes, come in, please. There's been an accident," he said to the young slave boy, and then, shutting the door, he took him from behind, so that the boy never knew what happened. And even as he knelt over the body drinking, he beckoned for the child, who slid from the couch and went down on her knees and took the wrist offered to her. Quickly pushing back the cuff of the shirt, she gnawed first, as if she meant to devour his flesh, and then Lestat showed her what to do. He sat back and let her have the rest, his eye on the boy's chest, so that when the time came, he bent forward and said, "No more. He's dying. You must never drink the blood after the heart stops, or you'll be sick again, sick to death. Do you understand?" But she'd had enough, and she sat next to him, their backs against the legs of the settee, their legs stretched out on the floor. The boy died in seconds. I felt weary and sickened, as if the night had lasted 1,000 years. I sat there watching them, the child drawing close to Lestat now, snuggling near him as he slipped his arms close to Lestat now, through his indifferent eyes remaining fixed on the corpse. Then he looked up at me. "Where's Mama?" asked the child softly. She had a voice equal to her physical beauty, clear like a silver bell. It was sensual. She was sensual. Her eyes were as wide and clear as Babette's. You understand what I was barely aware of what all this meant. I knew what it might mean, but I was aghast. Now Lestat stood up and scooped her from the floor and came towards me. "She's our daughter," he said. "You're going to live with us now." He beamed at her. His eyes were so cold, as if all were horrible joke. Then he looked at me, and his face had convicted. He pushed her towards me. I found her on my lap, my arms around her, feeling again how soft she was, how plump her skin was, like a skin of warm fruit, plums warmed by sunlight. Her huge luminescent eyes were fixed on me with trusting curiosity. "This is Louis. I am Lestat," he said to her, dropping her down beside me. She looked about and said it as if it was a pretty room, but she wanted her mama. He had to comb out and was running it through her hair, holding the locks so not to pull with the comb. Her hair was untangled and becoming like satin. She was the most beautiful child I'd ever seen, and now she glowed with the cold fire of a vampire. Her eyes were a woman's eyes. I could see it already. She would become white and spare like us, but not lose her shape. I understood now what Lestat had said about death, what it meant. I touched her neck where the 2 red puncture wounds were just bleeding a little while ago. I took Lestat's handkerchief from the floor and touched it to her neck. Your mama's left you with us. She wants you to be happy. She was saying that the same immeasurable confidence, she knows we can make you very happy. I want some more, she said, turning to the corpse on the floor. Hello, King Oxizer, welcome on in. Hope you're having a good evening. We're just reading some stories. Yes, it's interview at the vampire time. You can get comfy and just listen to the story. No, not tonight. Tomorrow night, said Lestat. And he went to take the lady out of the coffin. The child slid off my lap, and I followed her. She stood watching as Lestat put the 2 ladies and a slave boy into the bed. He brought up the covers to their chins. Are they sick? She asked. Yes, Claudia, he said. They're sick and they're dead. You see, they die when we drink from them. He came towards her and swung her up into his arms again. We stood there with her between us. I was mesmerized by her transformed, by her every gesture. She was not a child anymore. She was a vampire child. Now Louis was going to leave us, said Lestat, his eyes moving from my face to hers. He was going to go away, but now he's not, because he wants to stay and take care of you and make you happy. He looked at me. You're not going, are you, Louis? You bastard, I whispered to him. You fiend. Such language in front of our daughter, he said. I am not your daughter, she said with a very silvery voice. I'm my mama's daughter. No, dear, not anymore, he said to her. Thank you for the follow. Welcome on in, Dad. Hope you're having a good evening. We're just reading a book today. Vampire and Vampire Stories. He glanced at the window, and then he shut the bedroom door behind us and turned the key in the lock. You're our daughter, Louis's daughter, and my daughter. Do you see? Now, whom should you sleep with, Louis or me? And then looking at me, he said, perhaps you should sleep with Louis. After all, when I'm tired, I am not so kind. Ooh. The vampire stopped. The boy said nothing. A child vampire, he whispered finally. The vampire glanced up, suddenly as though startled, though the boy made no movement. He glared at the tape recorder as if it were something monstrous. The boy saw that the tape was almost out. Quickly, he opened a briefcase and drew out a new cassette, clumsily fitting it into place. He looked at the vampire as he pressed the record button. The vampire's face looked weary, drawn, his cheekbones more prominent, and his brilliant green eyes enormous. They had begun dark, which had come early in the San Francisco winter night, and now it was just before 10 p.m. The vampire straightened and smiled and said calmly, Are we ready to go on? He'd done this to the little girl just to keep you with him? Asked the boy. By the way, just a little quick FYI if you guys didn't know what a cassette is. Back in the day, people did not have computers, and they didn't have phones, and so if they wanted to record something, they had to use something called a cassette. You put it in the machine, and you press a button, and it recorded on a, I don't know how you would call it, it was a cassette tape thingy. It had like a little tiny film thing, and then you would record on it, and then you would replay it back, and it didn't last very long. History lesson over. That's a difficult to say. It was a statement. Unconvinced that Lestat was a person who preferred not to think or talk about his motives or beliefs, even to himself. I swear y'all don't know what it is. Probably not. That's why I took the time to to explain. It's before CDs. Sucking Tom Cruise's toes will come on in. Well, fancy you'd be here when I'm reading a story that was turned into a movie with Tom Cruise. Well, come on in. Hope you're having a good night. One of those people must act. Such a person must be pushed considerably before he will open up and confess that there is a method and thought to the way he lives. That is what had happened that night with Lestat. He'd been pushed to where he had discovered... What the heck was that? You fishers, you scared me. That was some type of award, an unlock. We caught 1,000 fish. Thank you. Hope the vampire gets a job. Yes. We have a job reading books. Buttery voice? I don't think so. Well, come on in, Rectangle. Good evening. We're just trying to be I don't know, putting you guys to sleep reading a book. You guys can play games, do whatever you want while I read you a story, okay? Old Misa Vampire here is going to read you a bedtime story, okay? Except it's not a happy story. It's a dark story. It'll be dark here. That is what happened that night with Lestat. He'd been pushed to where he had to discover, even for himself, why he lived as he did. Keeping me with him, that was undoubtedly part of what pushed him. But I think in retrospect that he himself wanted to know his own reasons for killing, wanted to examine his own life. He was discovering, when he spoke, what he did believe, but he did indeed want me to remain. He lived with me in a way that he could never have lived alone, and, as I've told you, I was careful never to sign any property over to him, which maddened him, that he could not persuade me to do. The vampire laughed suddenly. Look at all the other things he persuaded me to do. How strange. He could persuade me to kill a child, but not to part with my money. He shook his head. But, he said, it wasn't greed really. As you can see, it was fear of him that made me tight with him. You speak of him as if he were dead. You say Lestat was this, or was that. Is he dead? Asked the boy. I don't know, said the vampire. I think perhaps he is, but I'll come to that. We were talking of Claudia, weren't we? There was something else I wanted to say about Lestat's motives that night. Lestat trusted no one, as you see. He was like a cat, his own mission, a lone predator. Yet he had communicated with me that night. He had, to some extent, exposed himself simply by telling the truth. He had dropped his mockery, his condescension. He had forgotten his perpetual anger for just a little while, and this for Lestat was exposure. When we stood alone in that dark street, I felt him in a communion with another I hadn't felt since I had died. I rather think of that he ushered Claudia into vampirism for revenge. Yes, I am your big sis reading you a bedtime story, and I hope you enjoy it, and you don't have any nightmares about it. You might. Maybe I'll send you to sleep with some nightmares about vampires. Revenge, not only on you, but on the world, suggested the boy. Yes, as I said, Lestat's motives for everything resolved around revenge. Was it all started with the father? With the school? I don't know. I doubt it, said the vampire. But I want to go on. Oh, please go on. You have to go on. I mean, it's only 10 o'clock, the boy showed his watch. The vampire looked at it, and then he smiled at the boy. The boy's face changed. It went blank as if some sort of shock. Are you still afraid of me? Asked the vampire. The boy said nothing, but he shrank slightly from the edge of his table. His body elongated. His feet moved out over the bare boards and then contracted. I should think you'd be very foolish if you weren't, said the vampire. But don't be. Shall we go on? If you haven't read the story, or if you haven't watched the movie, or if you weren't here for the installments when the story talks about the boy, it's really a man who is a journalist that Louis invited over to his place one night to tell his story. So the boy, this is his first time encountering a vampire, and that's why it's called Interview with the Vampire. The boy is really just a young journalist who unluckily or luckily gets an interesting interview. Please, said the boy. He gestured toward the machine. Well, the vampire began, her life was much changed with Mademoiselle Claudia. As you can imagine, her body died, yet her senses awakened much as mine had, and I treasured in her signs of this. But I was not aware for quite a few days how much I wanted her, wanted to talk with her and be with her. At first, I thought only of protecting her from Lestat. I gathered into her my coffin every morning, and would not let her out of my sight with him if possible. This was what Lestat wanted, and he gave little suggestions that might do harm to her. A starving child is a frightful sight, he said to me. A starving vampire even worse. They'd hear her screams in Paris, he said. Were he to look away, to die. But all this was meant for me, to draw me close, to keep me there, afraid of fleeing alone. I would not conceive of risking it to Claudia. She was a child. She needed care. And there was much pleasure in caring for her. She forgot her 5 years of mortal life at once, or it seemed, for she was a mysteriously quiet one, and from time to time I even feared that she had lost all sense, that the illness of her mortal life combined with the great vampire shock might have robbed her of reason, but this proved hardly the case. She was simply unlike Lestat, and me to some extent. I couldn't comprehend her, for a little child she was, but also a fierce killer now capable of ruthless pursuit of blood, with all the child's demandings. And though Lestat still treated me with danger to her, he did not threaten her at all, but was loving to her, proud of her beauty, anxious to teach her that we must kill to live, and that we must ourselves could never die. The plague raged in the city then, as I've indicated, and he took to her this searching cemeteries where the yellow fever and plague victims lay in heaps, while the sounds of shovels never ceased, all throughout the day and night. This is death, he told her, pointing to the decaying corpse of a woman, which we cannot suffer. Our bodies will always stay the same as they are, fresh and alive. But we must never hesitate to bring death, because it is how we live. And Claudia gazed on this with inscrutable liquid eyes. If there was no understanding in this early years, there was no smattering of fear. Mute and beautiful, she played with dolls, dressing and undressing them by the hour. Mute and beautiful, she killed. And I, transformed by Lestat's instruction, was now to seek out humans in much greater numbers. But it was not only the killing of them that soothed some pain in me, which had been constant in the dark, still nights in Point du Lac, when I sat with only the company of Lestat and the old man. It was their great, shifting numbers everywhere in the streets, which never grew quiet, cabarets which never shut their doors, balls which lasted till dawn, the music and laughter streaming out of the open windows, people all around me now, still pulsing victims, not seen with the great love I'd felt for my sister and Babette, but with some new detachment and need, and I did kill them. Kills infinitely varied in great distances apart, as I walk with the vampire's sight and light movement through the teeming, burgeoning city, my victims surrounding me, seducing me, inviting me to their supper tables, their carriages, their brothels. I lingered only for a short while, long enough to take what I must have, soothed in my great melancholy that the town gave me an endless train of magnificent strangers. For that it was, I fed on strangers. I drew only close enough to see their pulsing beauty, the unique expression in the new and passionate voice, then killed before those feelings of revulsion could be aroused in me, that fear, that sorrow. Claudia and Lestat might hunt and seduce, stay long enough in company of the doomed victim, enjoying the splendid humor in his unwitted friendship with death. But I still could not bear it. And so to me, the swelled population was a mercy, a forest in which I was lost, unable to stop myself, whirling too fast through the pain, accepting again and again the invitation of death rather than extending it. We lived, meantime, in one of the new Spanish townhouses in the Rue Royale, a long, lavish upstairs flat above a shop I rented to the tailor, a hidden garden court behind us, a wall secure against the street, with fitted wooden shutters and a barred carrier door. A place far greater luxury and security than Point de Luc. Our servants were free people of color who left us to solitude before dawn for their own homes, and Lestat bought the very latest imports from France and Spain, crystal chandeliers, oriental carpets, silk screens with painted birds of paradise, canaries singing in domed golden cages, and delicate marble Grecian gods and beautifully painted Chinese vases. I did not need the luxury any more than I had needed it before, but I found myself enthralled with the new flood art of craft and design. I could stare at the intricate pattern of the carpet for hours, or watch the gleam of a lamplight change the somber colors of a Dutch painting. All this Claudia found wondrous, with the quiet awe of an unspoiled child, and marvelous was Lestat's hired a painter to make the walls of her room a magical forest of unicorns and golden birds, and laden fruit trees over sparkling streams. Endless train and dressmakers and shoemakers and tailors come to our flat to outfit Claudia in the best of children's fashions. So that was always a vision, not just a child beauty with her curling lashes and her glorious yellow hair, but of the taste of finely trimmed bonnets and tiny lace gloves, flaring velvet coats and capes, and sheer white puff sleeve gowns with gleaming blue sashes. Lestat played with her as if she were a magnificent doll, and I played with her as if she were a magnificent doll. And it was her pleading that forced me to give up my rusty black for dainty jackets and silk ties and soft gray coats and gloves and black capes. Lestat thought the best color of all times for vampires was black, possibly the only aesthetic principle he steadfastly maintained, but he wasn't opposed to anything other that which smacked a style of excess. He loved the great figure we cut, the three of us in our box at a few French opera houses or the Theatre des Lions, to which we would spend often as possible. Lestat having a passion for Shakespeare, which surprised me, though he often dozed through the operas and woke just in time to invite some lovely lady to midnight supper, where he would use all his skill to make her love him totally, then dispatch her violently to heaven or hell, and come home with her diamond ring to give Claudia. And all this time, I was educating Claudia, whispering in her tiny seashell ears that our internal life was useless to us if we did not see the beauty around us, the creation of the mortals everywhere. I was constantly sounding the depths of her still gaze as she took the books I gave her, whispered poetry I taught her, and played with the light but constantly touched her own strange coherent songs on the piano. She could fall for hours into the pictures of a book and listen to me read until she sat so still the slight and stir of her made me put the book down just to stare back at her across the lighted room. Then she'd move, a doll coming to life, and say in the softest voice that I must read some more. And then strange things began to happen. For though she said little was For though she said little and was the chubby round-figured child still, I'd find her tucked in the arm of my chair reading a work of Aristotle or Boethius, or a new novel just come out over the Atlantic, or pecking out the music of Mozart we'd only heard at night before with an infallible ear and a concentration that made her ghostly as she sat there for hour after hour, devouring the music, the melody, the bass, and finally bringing it together. Claudia was a mystery. It was not possible to know what she knew or what she did not know, and to watch her kill with chilling. She would sit alone in a dark square, waiting for a kindly gentleman or a woman to find her, her eyes more mindless than I had ever seen Lestat's. Like a child numbed with the fright, she would whisper her plea for help to the gentle, admiring patrons, and as they carried her to the square in her arms, would fix about their necks, her tongue between her teeth, her vision gazed with a consuming hunger. They found death fast in those first years, before she learned to play with them, to lead them to the doll shop or the cafe, where they gave her streaming cups of chocolate or tea, and the ruddying her pale cheeks, cups she pushed away, waiting and waiting as if feastingly silently on their terrible kindness. But when that was done, she was my companion, my pupil, her long hours spent with me consuming faster and faster the knowledge I gave to her, sharing with me some quiet understanding which could not include Lestat. At dawn she lay with me, her heart beating against mine, and many times when I looked at her, she was as if the music or painting, and didn't I know, stood in the room. I thought of that singular experience I'd had with her and no other, that I had killed her, taken her life from her. I had drank all of her life's blood in a fatal embrace. I had lavished on so much others who lay now moldering in the damp earth, but she lived. She lived to put her arms around my neck and press her tiny cupid's bow to my lips, and to put her gleaming eye to my eye until her lashes touched and laughed. We reeled about the room as if the wildest waltz, father and daughter. You can imagine how well it was Lestat did not envy us, but only smiled on from afar, waiting until she came to him. Then he would take her out to the street, and they would wave to me beneath the window, off to share what they shared, the hunt, the seduction, the kill. Years passed in this way, years and years and years. Yet it wasn't until some time had passed that an obvious fact occurred to me about Claudia. I suppose from the expression on your face you've already guessed, and you wonder why I didn't guess. I can only tell you time is not the same for me, nor was it for thus then. Day did not link to day, making a taut and jerking chain, rather the moon rose over lapping waves. Her body, Du Bois said. She was never to grow up. The vampire nodded. She was to be the demon child forever, he said, his soft voice as if wondering about it. Just as I am a young man, I was when I died, and Lestat the same. But her mind, it was a vampire's mind, and I strained to know how she moved towards womanhood. She came to talk more, though she never had other reflective person who could listen to me patiently for the hour without interruption. Yet more and more her doll-like face seemed to possess two totally aware adult eyes. The innocence seemed lost somewhere with the neglected toys and the loss of a certain patience. There was something dreadfully sensual about her lounging on the settee in the tiny nightgown of lace and stitched pearls. She became an eerie and powerful seductress, her voice as clear and sweet as ever, though it had a resonance which was womanish, a sharpness sometimes that proved shocking. After days of her usual quiet, she would scoff suddenly at Lestat's predictions about the war, or drinking blood from a crystal glass, said that there were no books in the house. We must get more, even if we had to steal them. and then coldly tell me in the library she'd heard of it in the Palatal Mansion in the Faubourg Manches Marie, a woman who collected books as if they were rocks or pressed butterflies. She asked if I might get her into the woman's bedroom. Yes, fish, fish, fish. I was aghast at such moments. Her mind was unpredictable, unknowing. But then she would sit on my lap and put her finger in my hair and doze there against my heart, whispering to me softly, I should never be a grown up as she still until I knew that killing was the more serious thing. Not the books, the music. Always the music, she whispered. Doll, doll, I called her. That's what she was, a magic doll. Laughter and infinite intellect, and then round-cheeked face, the bud mouth. Let me dress you. Let me brush your hair, I would say to her out of old habit, aware of her smiling and watching me with a thin veil of boredom over her expression. Do as you like, she breathed into my ear as I bent down to fasten her pearl buttons. Only kill with me tonight. You never let me see you kill, Louis. She wanted a coffin of her own by now, which left me more wounded than I would have let her see. I walked out after giving my gentleman consent, and for how many years I had slept with her as if she were a part of me, I couldn't know. But then I found her near the Ursuline convent, an orphan loft in the darkness, and she ran suddenly towards me and clutched me with a human desperation. I don't want it if it hurts you, she confided so softly that a human embrace us both couldn't have heard or felt her breath. I'll stay with you as always, but I must see it. Don't you understand? A coffin for a child. We were to go to the coffin makers. A play, a tragedy in act. I to leave her in this little parlor and confide to him in the anteroom that she was to die. Talk of love, she must have the best, that she must not know, and the coffin maker, shaken with the tragedy of it, must make it for her. Picturing her laid there on her white satin, dabbing a tear from his eye despite all the years. But why, Claudia? I pleaded with her. I loathed to do it, loathed cat and mouse with the helpless human, but hopelessly her father. I took her there and sat her on the sofa, where she sat with folded hands in her lap, her tiny bonnet bent down, as if she didn't know what we whispered about her in the foyer. The undertaker was an old and greatly refined man of color who drew me swiftly aside, lest the baby should hear. But why must she die? He begged me, as if I were a god who ordained it. Her heart, she cannot live, I said, the words taken on for me in a peculiar power, a disturbing resonance. The emotion in the narrow, heavily lined face disturbed me. Something came to my mind, a quality of light, a gesture, the sound of something, a child crying in a stench-filled room. Now he unlocked after another of his long rooms and showed me the coffins, the black lacquer and the silver she wanted. And suddenly I found myself backing away from him out of the coffin house, hurriedly taking her hand. The order's been taken, I said to her. It's driving me mad. I breathed the fresh air of the street as though I'd been suffocated. And then I saw her compassionless face, studying mine. She slipped her small gloved hand back into my own. I want it, Louis, she explained patiently. And then one night she climbed the undertaker's stairs, sat beside her for the coffin, and left the coffin maker unaware, dead across the dusty piles of paper on his desk. And there the coffin lay in her bedroom, where she watched it, often by the hour, when it was new, as if the things were moved around, alive, or unfolded some mystery to her little by little, as things do with change. But she did not sleep in it. She slept with me. There were other changes in her. I cannot date them or put them in order. She did not kill indiscriminately. She fell into demanding patterns. Poverty began to fascinate her. She begged Lestat or me to take a carriage out through the Faubourg Street Marie to the riverfront places where the immigrants lived. She seemed obsessed with the women and children. These things Lestat told me with great amusement, for I was loath to go there and would sometimes not be persuaded under any circumstance. But Claudia had a family there, which she took one by one, and she had asked to enter the cemetery of the suburb city of the Lafayette, and there roamed the high marble tombs in search of those desperate men who, having no place else to sleep, spend what little they have in a bottle of wine, and crawl into a rotting vault. Lestat was impressed, overcome. What a picture he had made of her! The infant death, he called her, sister death, and sweet death, and for me, mockingly, he had the term with the sweeping bow, merciful death, which he said like a woman clapping her hands and shouting out to the world of exciting gossip. Oh, merciful heavens, so that I wanted to strangle him. But there was no quarreling. We kept to ourselves. We had our adjustments. Books filled our long flat from floor to ceiling in a row after row of gleaming leather volumes, as Claudia and I pursued our natural tastes, and Lestat went about his lavish acquisitions, until she began to ask questions. The vampire stopped, and the boy looked as anxious as before, as if patience took a great effort. But the vampire had brought his long white fingers together as if to make the church steep, and then folded them to press his palms tight. It was as if he had forgotten the boy altogether. I should have known, he said, that it was inevitable, and I should have seen the signs of it coming, for I was so in tune to her. I loved her so completely. She was so much a companion of my every waking hour, the only companion that I had other than death. I should have known. But something in me was conscious of an enormous gulf of darkness very close to us, as though we walked away near the sheer cliff and might see it to suddenly be too late, if we made the wrong turn or became too lost in our thoughts. Sometimes the physical world about me seemed insubstantial, except for the darkness. As if a fault in the earth were about to open, I could see the great crack breaking down the Rue Royale, and all the buildings were falling to dust and rumble. But the worst of all, they were transparent gossamers, like a stage drops made of silk. I'm distracted. What do I say? That I ignored the signs in her, that I clung desperately to the happiness she had given me, and still gave me, and ignored all else. But these were signs. She grew cold to Lestat. She fell to staring at him for hours. When he spoke, often she didn't answer him, and one could hardly tell if it was contempt or that she didn't hear. And the fragile domestic tranquility erupted with outrage. He did not have to be loved, but he would not be ignored. And once he even flew at her, shouting that he would slap her. And I found myself in the wretched position of fighting him, as I had done years before. She's not a child any longer, I whispered to him. I don't know what it is. She's a woman. I urged him to take it lightly, and he affected disdain and ignored her in turn. But one evening, he came in flustered and told me she'd followed him, though she'd refused to go with him to the kill. She'd followed him afterwards. What's the matter with her? He flared at me, as though I'd given birth to her and must know. And then one night, our servants vanished. 2 of the best maids we ever retained, a mother and daughter. The coachman was sent to their homes only to report they'd disappeared, and then the father was at our door pounding the knocker. He stood back at the brink of the sidewalk, regarding with me at the grave suspicion that sooner or later crept into the faces of all mortals who knew us as, for any length of time, the forerunner of death, as parlor might be in a fatal fever. And I tried to explain to him they had not been here, mother or daughter, and we must begin some search. It's she, Lestat hissed from the shadows when I shut the gate. She's done something to them, and brought risks for all of us. I'll make her tell me. And he pounded up the spiral stairs from the courtyard. I knew that she'd gone, slipped out somewhere, and I was at the gate, and I knew something else that a vague stench came across the courtyard from the shut, unused kitchen, a stench that mingled uneasily with the honeysuckle, a stench of graveyards. I heard Lestat coming down as I approached the warped shutters, locked the rust to the small brick building. No food was ever prepared there, nor work ever done, so that it lay like an old brick vault under the tangles of honeysuckle. The shutters came loose, the nails having turned to dust, and I heard Lestat gasp as we stepped into the reeking dark. There they lay on the bricks, mother and daughter, arm of the mother fastened around the waist of the daughter, and the daughter's head bent against the mother's breast, both foul with feces and swarming with insects. A great cloud of gnats rose as the shutters fell back, and I waved them away from me and from convulsion and disgust. Ants crawled undisturbed over the eyelids and the mouth of the dead pair, and in the moonlight I could see the endless map of silvery paths of snails. "Damn her!" Lestat burst out, and I grabbed his arm and held him fast, pitting all my strength against him. "What do you mean to do with her?" I insisted. "What can you do? She's not a child anymore. That will do what we say simply because we say it. We must teach her. She knows." He stood back from me, brushing his coat. "She knows. She knows she's known for years what to do, what can be risked and what cannot. I won't have her do this without my permission. I won't tolerate it." "Then are you master of all of us? You didn't teach her that. Was she supposed to imbibe it for every subservience? I don't think so. She sees herself equal to us now, and us as equal to each other. I tell you we must reason with her, instruct her to respect what is ours, as all of us should respect it." He stalked off, obviously absorbed in what he had said, though he would give no admission of it to me. And he took his vengeance to the city. Yet when he came home, fatigued and satiated, she was still not there. He sat against the velvet arm of the couch and stretched his long legs out on the length of the couch. "Did you bury them?" he asked me. "They're gone," I said. I did not care to say even to myself that I had buried the remnants in the old unused kitchen stove. "But there is the father to deal with, and the brother," I said to him. I feared his temper. I wished at once to plan some way to quickly dispose of whom the problem. But he said now to the father and the brother were no more, that dead had come to dinner in the small house near the ramparts, and stayed to say the grace to everyone was done. "Wine," he whispered, now running his fingers on his lips. Both of them had drank too much wine. I found myself tapping the fence post with a stick to make a tune. He laughed. "But I don't like it, the dizziness. Do you like it?" And when he looked at me, I had to smile at him because the wine was working in him, and he was mellow. And in that moment his face looked warm and reasonable. I leaned over and said, "I hear Claudia's taps on the stairs. Be gentle with her. It's all done." She came in with her bonnet, ribbons undone, and her little boots caked in dirt. I watched them tensely, Lestat with a sneer on his lips. She as unconscious as him as if he weren't there. She had a bouquet with white chrysanthemums in her arms. Such a large bouquet it made her all of a more small child. Her bonnet fell back now, hung on her shoulder for an instant, and then fell to the carpet, and all through her golden hair I saw the narrow petals of the chrysanthemum. "Tomorrow is the feast of All Saints," she said. "Did you know?" "Yes," I said to her. "It is a day in New Orleans when all the faithful go to the cemeteries to care for the graves of their loved ones. They whitewash the plaster walls of the vaults, clean the names cut into the marble slabs, and finally they deck the tombs with flowers. In the St. Louis ceremony, which was very near a house in which all the great Louisiana families were buried, in which our own brother was buried. There were even little iron benches set before the graves where the families might sit to receive the other families who had come to the cemetery for the same purpose. It was a festival in New Orleans, a celebration of death. It might have seemed to tourists who didn't understand it, but it was a celebration of the life after. I brought this from one of the vendors, Claudia said. Her voice was soft and inscrutable, her eyes opaque and with emotion. For the two of you left in the kitchen, Lestat said fiercely. She turned to him for the first time, but said nothing. She stood there staring at him, as if she had never seen him before, and then she took several steps towards him and looked at him, still as if she were positively examining him. I moved forward. I could feel his anger, his coldness, and now she turned at me. And then, looking from one another at us, she said, "Which one of you did it? Which of you made me what I am?" I could not have been more astounded at the sight she might have done or said, and yet it was inevitable that her long silence would be broken by this. She seemed very little concerned with me, though, her eyes fixed on Lestat. "You speak of us as if we always existed as the way we are now," she said, her voice soft, measured, the child's tone rounded with the woman's seriousness. "You speak of them out of their mortals, us as vampires. But it was not always so. Louis had a mortal sister. I remember her, and there is a picture of her in his trunk. I've seen him look at her. He was immortal, the same as she, and so was I. Why else the size, the shape?" She opened her arms now and let the chrysanthemums fall to the floor. I whispered her name. I think I meant to distract her. It was impossible. The tide had turned. Lestat's eyes burned with a keen fascination of malignant pleasure. "You made us the way we are, didn't you?" she accused him. He raised his eyebrows now in mock amazement. "What are you?" he asked. "And would you be something other than what you are?" He drew up his knees and leaned forward, his eyes narrow. "Do you know how long it's been? Can you picture yourself? Must I find a hag to show you your mortal conscience now, if I had let you alone?" She turned away from him, stood for a moment as if she had no idea what to say or do. Then she moved towards the chair beside the fireplace, climbing on it, curled up like the most helpless child. She brought her knees close to her velvet coat open, her silk dress tight around her knees, and she stared at the ashes and the heath. But there was nothing helpless about her stare. Her eyes had independent life, as if the body were possessed. "You could be dead by now if you were mortal," Lestat insisted to her, pricked by her silence. He drew his legs around the set of his boots on the floor. "Do you hear me? Why do you ask me this now? Why do you make such a thing of it? You've known all your life you're a vampire." And so he went on in a tirade, saying much the same thing he'd said to me many times over. Know your nature. Kill. Be what you are. But all of this seemed strangely beside the point, for Claudia had no qualms about killing. She sat back now and let her head roll slowly where she could see him across from her. She was studying him again, as if they were a puppet on strings. "Did you do it to me? And how?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "How did you do it? And why should I tell you? It's my power." "Why yours alone?" she asked, her voice icy, her eyes heartless. "How was it done?" she demanded suddenly in rage. It was electric. He rose from the couch, and I was on my feet immediately facing him. "Stop her," he said to me. He wrung his hands. "Do something about her. I can't endure her." And then he started for the door, but turned and came back, drew very close, that he towered over Claudia, putting her in a deep shadow. He glared at her, her eyes moving back and forth over his face with total detachment. "I can undo what I did, both of you and him," he said to her, his finger pointing to me across the room. "Be glad I made you what you are," he sneered, "or I'll break you into 1,000 pieces." Well, the peace of the house was destroyed, though there was quiet. Days passed, and she asked no questions, though now she was deep into books of the occult, of witches and witchcraft, and of vampires. This was mostly fancy, you understand. Myth tales, sometimes mere romantic horror tales. But she read it all, till dawn she read, so that I had to go and collect her and bring her to bed. Lestat, meantime, hired a butler and a maid, and had a team of workers in to make great foundation in the courtyard with the stone nymph pouring water, eternal from the wide-mouthed shell. He had a goldfish brought from the boxes of rooted water lilies, set into fountain, till the blossoms rested onto the surface, and shivered in the ever-moving water. A woman had seen him kill on the Naiads Road, which ran to the town of Carlton, and there were stories of it in the papers, associating him with the haunted house near Naiads and Mevalmain, all which was delighted him. He was the Hades Road ghost for some time, though it finally fell to back pages, and then he performed another grisly murder in another public place, and set the imagination of New Orleans to working. But all of this had about the same quality of fear. He was pensive, suspicious, drew close to me constantly to ask where Claudia was, what she'd gone, what she'd been doing. She'll be all right, I assured him, though I wasn't strangled from her in the agony, as if she'd been a bride. She hardly saw me now, and she'd not seen Lestat before, and she might walk away while I spoke to her. She had better be all right, he said nasally. And what will you do if she's not? I asked, more in fear than accusation. He looked up at me with the cold gray eyes. You take care of her, Louis. You talk to her, he said. Everything was perfect, and now this? There's no need for it. But it was my choice to let her come to me. Thank you for the hat pats. And she did. It was early in the evening when she'd just awakened. The house was dark. I saw her standing by the French windows. She wore a puffed sleeve and pink sash and was watching with lowered lashes and evening rush to the Rue Royale. And I could hear Lestat in his room, the sound of water splashing from the pitcher. The faint smell of his cologne came and went like the sound of music from the cafe 2 doors down from us. He'll tell me nothing, she said softly. I hadn't realized that she had opened my eyes. I came towards her and knelt beside her. You'll tell me, won't you? How is it done? Is this what you truly want to know? I asked her, searching her face. Or is it why it was done to you? And what you were before? I don't understand what you mean by how. For if you mean how was it done to you that you turn it may do, I don't even know what it is. What you're saying, she said, with a touch of coldness. Then she turned full around and put her hands on my face. Kill with me tonight, she whispered, and tell me all that you know. What are we? Why are we not like them? She looked down into the street. I don't know the answer to your questions, I said to her. Her face contorted suddenly, as if she were straining to hear over the sudden noise, and then she went on, I wonder the same things you wonder. I do not know. How was I made? I'll tell you that. The Lestat did it to me. But the real how of it, I don't know. Her face had that same look of strain. I was seeing it in its first traces of fear, or something worse and deeper than fear. Claudia, I said to her, putting my hands over her hands and pressing them gently against my skin, Lestat has one wise thing to tell you. Don't ask these questions. You've been my companion for countless years in my search, after all, and that could learn from a mortal life and mortal creation. Don't be my companion now in this anxiety. He can't give us the answers, and I have none. I could see she could not accept this. But I hadn't expected the convulsion turned away, the violence in which she tore at her own hair for an instant, and then she stopped as if to gesture that were useless and stupid. It filled me with apprehension. She was looking at the sky. It was smoky, starless, and clouds blowing fast from the direction of the river. She made a sudden movement on her lips, as if she'd bitten into them. Then she turned to me, and still whispering, she said, "Then he made me. He did it. You did not." There was something so dreadful about her expression. I'd left her before I meant to do it. I was standing there in the fireplace, lighting a single candle in front of the tall mirror, and then suddenly I saw something which startled me. Gathered out of the gloom first a hideous mask, then becoming a three-dimensional reality, a weathered skull. I stared at it. It smelled faintly of the earth still, but had been scrubbed. "Why don't you answer me?" she was asking. I heard Lestat's door open. He would go out to kill at once, and at least to find the kill. I would not. I wouldn't let the first hours of the evening accommodate a quiet as hunger accumulated me, till the drive grew almost too strong, so that I might give by myself to it all the more completely, blindingly. I could hear it question again clearly, as though it had been floating in the air like a reverberation of a bell, and felt my heart pounding. Did he make me? Of course. He said so himself. But you hide something from me. Something he hints at when I question him. He says that it could not have been done without you. I found myself staring at the skull, yet hearing her as if words were lashing me to make me turn around and face the lash. Thank you for the follow, Bunny Shark. Welcome on in at Twilight. We're just reading some books. Sit back and relax and enjoy. The thought went through me more and more like a flash of cold, and through the nothing I could remain now such from the skull. I turned around and saw in the light from the streets, from her eyes, like two dark flames in her white face, a doll from whom someone had cruelly ripped the eyes and replaced with a demonic fire. I found myself moving towards her, whispering her name, some thought forming on my lips. Then dying, coming towards her, then away from her, fussing for her coat and her hat. I saw a tiny glove on the floor, which was a phosphorant of the shadows, and just for a moment I thought it was tiny severed hand. "What's the matter with you?" She drew near, looking up at my face. "What has always been the matter? Why do you stare at the skull like that, at the glove?" she asked as gently, but not gently enough. There was a slight calculation in her voice, an unreachable detachment. "I need you," I said to her without wanting to say it. "I cannot bear to lose you. You're the only companion I have in this immortality. But surely there must be others. Surely we're not the only vampires on Earth." I heard her saying this as I had said it, heard my own words coming back to me now on the tide of her self-awareness, her searching. But there's no pain, I thought suddenly. There's urgency, heartless urgency. I looked down at her. "Aren't you the same as I?" She looked at me. "You've taught me all I know." "Lestat taught you to kill." I fetched a glove. "Here, come. Let's go out." I wanted to go out. I was stammering, trying to force the gloves on her. I lifted the great curly mass of her hair and placed it gently over her coat. "But you taught me to see," she said. "You taught me the words vampire eyes," she said. "You taught me to drink the world, the hunger for more than." "I never meant those words the way, vampire eyes," I said to her. "It has a different ring when you say it." She was tugging at me, trying to make me look closer. "Come," I said to her. "I've something to show you." And quickly I led her down the passage and down the spiral stairs to the dark courtyard. But I no more knew I had shown her really than I had known when I was going, only that I had to move towards it with a sublime and doomed instinct. We rushed through the early evening city, the sky overhead a pale violet now, and the clouds were gone, the stars small and faint. The air sounds of sultry, fragrant air as we moved away from the spacious gardens, towards the mean and narrow streets that where flowers erupt in the cracks of the stones, and the huge oleander shoots and the thick waxen stems of the white pink blossoms, like a monstrous weed in an empty lot. I heard the staccato of the Claudia steps as she rushed beside me, never once asking me to slacken my pace. She stood finally, her face indefinitely patient, looking up at me in a dark and narrow street where a few old slope-roofed French houses remained among the Spanish facades and ancient little houses. The plaster glistened from the moldering brick beneath. I had found the house now, by the blind effort, aware that I was always known where it was and I avoided it, always turned before this dark lampart corner, not wishing to pass this low window where I'd first heard Claudia cry. The house was standing still, sunk lower than it was in those days, the alleyway crisscrossed with sagging cords of laundry, the weeds high among the low foundation, the two dormer windows broken and patched with cloth. I touched the shutters. "It was here I first saw you," I said to her, thinking to tell it to her so she would understand, yet feeling now the chill of her gaze, the distance of her stare. "I heard you crying. You were there in your room with your mother, and your mother was dead. Dead for days, and you didn't know. You clung to her, whining, crying pitifully, your body white and feverish and hungry. You were trying to wake her from the dead. You were hugging her for warmth, for fear. It was almost morning, and I put my hands to my temples. I opened the shutters. I came into the room. I felt pity for you. Pity. But something else. I saw her lips slack, her eyes wide. You fed on me?" she whispered. "I was your victim?" "Yes," I said to her. "I did it." There was a moment so elastic and painful as to be unbearable. She stood stark still in the shadows, her huge eyes gathering the light, the warm air rising suddenly with a soft noise, and then she turned. I heard the clicking of her slippers, and then she ran and ran and ran. I stood frozen, hearing the sound growing smaller and smaller, and then I turned, the fear in me unraveling, growing huge and insurmountable. I ran after her. It was unthinkable that I could not catch her, that I had not overtake her at once and tell her that I loved her, must have her, must keep her, and every second that I ran headlong down the dark street after she was like her slipping away from me in a dark, drop by drop, my heart was pounding, unfed, pounding and rebelling against the strain, until I came suddenly to a dead stop. She stood beneath a lamp-post, staring mutely, as if she didn't know. I took her small waist in both hands and lifted her into the light. She studied me, her face contorted, her head turning as if she wouldn't give me her direct glance, as if she must deflect an overpowering feeling of revulsion. "You killed me," she whispered. "You took my life." "Yes," I said to her, holding her so I could feel her heart pounding. "Rather, I tried to take it, to drink it away. But you had a heart like no other heart I've ever felt, a heart that beat and beat until I had to let you go, had to cast you away from me, lest you quicken my pulse till I would die. And it was Lestat who found me out. Louis, the sentimentalist, the fool, feasting on a golden-haired child, a wholly innocent little girl. He brought you back from the hospital where they'd put you, and I never knew what he meant to do except to teach me my nature. Take her, finish it, he said. And I felt the passion for you again. Oh, I know I've lost you for now and forever. I can see it in your eyes. You look at me as you do on the mortals from afar, from the same region of cold self-sufficiency. I can't understand, but I did it. I felt for you again, a vile, unsupportive hunger for your hammering heart, this cheek, this skin. You were pink and fragrant, a mortal child, or sweet with the bite of salt and dust. I held you again, and I took you again. And when I thought your heart would kill me, I didn't care. He parted us and gashed his own wrist, gave it to you to drink. And drink you did, and drink until you nearly drained him and he was reeling. But you were a vampire then, and that very night you drank a human's blood, and have every night thereafter. Her face had not changed. The flesh was like a wax of ivory candles. Only the eyes showed life. There was nothing more for me to say to her. I sat her down. I took your life, I said. He gave it back to you. And here it is, she said under her breath. And I hate you both. The vampire stopped. Good news, Misa. The mod author is planning on adding a new version of Seamless in around a week. Said it for the most part it's working, and they just okay. Very good to know. Unfortunately, I won't be able to grind. Maybe I'll get like 1 or 2 grind sessions in before, but I will be traveling on Wednesday, so I don't know how much I'll be able to do before then, but I do want to clear the first game before touching. I won't even touch the DLC till maybe like you and Vesper have it anyways, but I will try to respec and everything. But thanks for the update. Okay, catch. Okay. I think this is a pretty good place to stop. Hold on, let me check. 249. I think this is a chapter. Let me write that down. Page 249. Release. Oh, yeah. Hates and found out truth. I'm gonna write it down. Because last time I didn't write down where I stopped, and then I was like, oops. I had a guess. But I wanted to get to this part because this is my favorite part of the story, actually. Okay. We're going to move out of here and go to just chatting. Give me a second. We're going to go to... And now I scream in your ears, wake up! Okay, sorry. There's probably some people actually sleeping. I'm sorry. I'm going to get some soft music. This one? I can't hear it. There you go. We got more of the story done. Hope you guys liked it. ASMR is something that I've always had an interest in. Always kind of wanted to do more of, but always kind of felt apprehensive about it because it's one of those things people either like it or they hate it. But for some reason I feel like it's fitting for me. Like reading. I don't know. I just wanted to do it, so I put it on my bucket list of you need to try one of these again and see how that goes. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I know Sundays are like really chill days, so it's not a good indicator of whether or not people like it or not. But I feel like I should eventually finish the book. Hello, Promethean. Welcome on in. Happy Sunday. Chat is chilling, and if they want to chill, that's fine. That's the whole point of ASMRs. If you guys liked it, I don't know. Let me know, because I would like to do more. Whether it be a reading, whether it just be like chill chatting, because I know a lot of people do those too. I do know that a lot of people don't like trigger ASMRs, and I am one of those as well. I don't like to mostly I don't like the really strange noises, but I also don't have an ear mic, so I can't make like looking to ears sound, which I wouldn't do anyways. So I feel like, we could do more ASMR, but like in a more chill fashion, like chatting, reading. We can even kind of make silly ones, like reading fan fictions or some weird stuff. I don't know, but I like it. It's chill. Kind of fits with my teacher vibes. It's like I'm reading a big storybook to people. You guys are sitting on the carpet. I don't get the ASMR effect, but I do enjoy the story time. Yeah, it's hit or miss. I've had people tell me both. They've rather told me I don't like story time ASMRs, and I've told people have told me they don't like sound trigger ASMRs. So that's why I've been apprehensive to try them because I've heard that people hate both. But I just wanted to do it because soul searching. I feel like what am I good at? What matches? And I feel like ASMR matches because my voice is chill. I am very even kill person, and I feel like it matches. And so maybe I'll do more of them and say whatever. You guys don't like, you don't like it. Just gonna do it, okay? So you might see more of those. Maybe reading, maybe just chatting, because I know there are some people that just do like ASMR chatting streams where they're just chatting and they're using that very soft voice to talk to you like they're whispering in your ear. Maybe I'll do those. Yeah, just vibing. Just vibing. Um, to circle back, I leave on Wednesday, so hopefully I can get a session or two of grinding of Elden Ring, because essentially my thought process is go in. I don't know. I don't think I download. I don't know how the DLC works. How does DLC work? Does it just like automatically get applied or something? Because that would suck. Well, maybe it doesn't matter because if I'm opening the seamless co-op, maybe it doesn't matter. But anyways, the goal is to respec to use a different weapon. I'm thinking maybe whip, max out that weapon, see if I can find any flasks or flax fills that I don't have, and level up a little bit, and then hopefully be able to take on the Elden Beast because couldn't kill that. And then after that, when the seamless co-op is available on DLC, play that with the boys. That's the hope. Maybe we'll see. Like I said, I'll be on vacation starting on Wednesday, and I'll be gone until I won't come back until the 5th, which basically means I wouldn't stream until probably the 6th. So how many days is that? Let's see, one. Oh, so I can't stream that Tuesday because my flight leaves at 7, so I need to be at the airport by 5. So that means leaving super duper early. So probably this is the last stream until this is the last stream until I come back. So surprise. Actually, it's not a surprise. I've been saying thank you. Yeah. So how many days? It's basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 12-ish days. So that's not 2 weeks. So I think you guys will be okay. Just don't forget me while I'm gone. It happens. It literally happens. People will be like, you know what? I can now use this time to do something else. And then you come back and they're not back. No. Um, my parents live on the West Coast. I'm gonna go see them. My high school friends are there. Spend some time with them. Yeah, so that's what I like to do. My summer is gonna be a lot of like vacations and stuff because uh, my mind needs some resetting. So this is the first. I want to go to the beach. I want to go to Canada. I want to go to some concerts. So summertime might be random. Hey guys, I'm not gonna be streaming this or that day because I'll probably be on vacation. Uh, because work was stressful this year. It was a lot of work. A lot of. Uh, if you were here, you're being attacked by kids and stuff like that. It affects you. So I want to use the summer because it was funny because they're like, "Are you working during the summer?" I'm like, "No." No, staying far away from working. Um, and plus, I don't have to. I won't be working. I'll be chilling. Which I've already started my vacation, anyways. Oh, that reminds me. Oh, anyways, I gotta figure out if I can get my book. I do. I will take a class if they give me my book. But other than that, yeah. So I'll be gone. I will still be on Discord. So it's not like, oh wow, Misa just abandoned everybody. I'll still be on Discord. I'll still be on Twitter. You'll still see me there. Probably post pictures and stuff like that. Um, Probably my stream when I come back will be like like a just chatting, and it could be a hand cam stream. I don't know. Well, I'm gonna have a lot of crap. Okay, I'm gonna buy a lot of crap that I could probably show off like I normally do. But yeah, we'll do that. So we'll anticipate next stream to be on the 6th of July. I will be on Pacific Standard Time, so um, yeah, I'll be on a different time zone as well. I'm on EST, so I'll be transferring over to PST. So that may affect some stuff as well. All right, get away fires. That's gone. That's gone. That's good. I think the alerts was good. All I gotta do is play with the sounds. I didn't have to turn them off. So that's good. I just have to put the sound back up. Late, but usually DLC auto installs unless you choose not to download it, which gets you it. You can check in your library. Oh, I didn't know it auto installs. Really? How do you check this? Manage? Properties? I can't. Oh, here we go. Yeah, it auto installed. Hopefully, I can still play the seamless. I didn't know that. I didn't know it just auto installed. I will play around and see because I've heard it's very tough. So. Oh no. Okay. I'll check that later. Hopefully, it's fine. If not, oh well. We'll figure something out. But yeah. So I might offline play Elden Ring maybe tomorrow or maybe Tuesday. Cause Tuesday only thing is I just gotta not be like up until 11. So maybe Monday and Tuesday offline play if it works. That's the I don't know. That's the goal. We'll see. Anyways, let me get this. Make it this open. All right, Twitch. Everyone I see said like are level 150 and using the same cheese builds. It's probably still hard, but I doubt it's as bad as they make it. I have no idea. I'm just bad at it, so we will see. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, it's fun though. I didn't dislike it. It just was poorly optimized. Okay, let me see here. Minecraft. This stuff is turned off, so for anybody that doesn't know, usually when you do ASMR type streams, you turn all that stuff off. Alerts, throws, sounds, because it's supposed to be atmospheric and those kind of things are very distracting. So none of that was turned on. TTS was not turned on. Throws was not turned on. Alerts were not turned on. They were all turned off. Cool, man. But that's just how it is. I'll turn them back on though. We'll come back and you can play with it. We can raid the doggo because the doggo raided us that one time. Let me make sure that the I have ads, pre-roll ads. Alright, /raid Eco Kane. So we'll raid the dog. Eco. They're playing, it looks like they're playing Dead by Daylight? Is it? Yeah, they're playing DBD. They're a dog playing DBD. So we'll raid them. Let me get... Well, for those of you that were here, thanks you for hanging out. I will miss you guys while I'm away. Because for some people, the most interactions we have is in streams. So, I will miss you while I'm away. I hope to see you guys when I come back on the 6th of July. I hope that you guys take care of yourselves. If the heat continues, then make sure to take proper precautions and, hydrate, shade, everything like that. Make sure you still have fun and, everything like that. And like I said, I'll still be around on Discord and Twitter, so it's not like I will disappear. I just won't have streams because I do need a break from many different things, including streams, work, life, and just go back to where I feel comfortable. Okay, so thank you for hanging out, and I hope to see you guys again in July. With that, let's go raid the doggo, and I will see you guys next time. Jane. That's if it will let me raid, please. Awkward. Bye.